Reported Obama's new bill is not just a 12-cent hike, it is a 67% increase in highway taxes. Much of that money is going to be redistributed to crony capitalists, to a kind of fascism, but it's also going to be reallocated to things other than roads and bridges for the cars and the drivers who are paying those highway taxes. A lot of that's going to be redirected to these pet projects, these crony capitalism projects to put in light rail. And, of course, they're also going up on student loans by 20%. Those are just some of the economic issues. Things are accelerating. Alex Jones is going to be in the show live in studio. He's going to go over some of the news that's coming up, and I know he's going to have a lot to say about this new California bill that would allow police to confiscate guns just based on accusation, shredding the whole idea of due process. Now, last night we went to see the new film by Dinesh D'Souza, America, and I want to give you a little bit more about my take on that. But before I do, I want to let you know that this hour of the Alex Jones Show is brought to you by our sponsor, My Patriot Supply, as we look at the pending economic collapse, the collapse of the border, the soaring meat prices, the soaring prices at the gas pump. It's clear there's no longer time to wait. You need to start getting prepared today. Go to mypatriotsupply.com, check out their complete line of preparedness products. My Patriot Supply is the home of the Patriot Pantry line of emergency food storage. If you don't have food, you're no threat to the New World Order. They're counting on you to be ever-dependent slaves to their system of control. But you can fight back. You can establish independence for yourself, for your family, by securing your own private supply of storable food. There's no better way to prepare than this Patriot-owned company. Visit mypatriotsupply.com/Alex for some of the best special offers to listeners of this broadcast. For limited time only, they're offering additional discounts off their already low prices. That site again is mypatriotsupply.com/Alex. Now, as I was just saying, we have a film review from last night. The official release of Dinesh D'Souza's America is today. Several of us with the InfoWar crew went there last night. Jakari Jackson, Kit Daniels, and I, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, my son, we gave our take on it on an iPhone just as we stepped outside the movie theater. As I've thought about it more, I wanted to I gave it a thumbs up. I like it. I would recommend that you go to see it. We need to support independent film. We need to support a variety of voices who are going to give us a different take on things than the Michael Moores of the world, than Hollywood. We need that other conversation in there. And there's some very good things about this movie. I thought the production values were excellent. As Darren McBreen said, the Fox News crowd is going to love their worldview on it. It's very Republican, very GOP. But just like religion and politics, there's a lot of disagreement that people are going to have about a lot of different issues. One of the strongest things that he had in there was his take on Saul Alinsky, his expose of Saul Alinsky. That's very good. And if you've got somebody in school, if you've got family or children who are in college, or somebody that's even in government school, his take on Howard Zinn and Howard Zinn's revisionist history of America, that was really the main thrust of the movie, in my opinion. It was really kind of the academic world in which Dinesh D'Souza really kind of stays for the most part. And so that was what he was most concerned about. And that was how American history was being changed by Howard Zinn and others to try to make us collectively feel guilty, because that's a way that they can essentially take down our system of government. And at that level, he's very right. That whole premise is a very strong premise, that we don't want to destroy America and rebuild this socialist paradise. And that's the motivation with Howard Zinn and many of these other people. But I think that's also a weakness of the film, in that it ignores the police state. It ignores what George Bush did. When he looks at these various criticisms from the academic left, when he looks at the criticisms about slavery, when he looks at the criticisms about how the Indians were treated, when he looks at the criticisms about what we're doing with the military-industrial complex, his defense, I thought, really fell flat. When he talks about slavery, it was essentially talking about how the other countries of the world, historically, and all other countries have had slaves. That just doesn't do it. It's not enough to say everybody does it. We need to condemn it without any reservations, categorically. And we need to move on. Where he got it right were in quotes like from Bono, where he talked about the ideals of America, that America was essentially an idea. And that's what we need to take away from the founders. The founders had a wonderful idea of building a country based on individual liberty and certain inalienable rights. Now, they were less than perfect people. There was hypocrisy in what they did. There was contradiction in what they did. We don't need to make excuses for that. We can condemn that and still embrace the ideal. Part of what they did was to give us a system of government of checks and balances. That came from their Christian understanding of the fallen nature of man, that man is inherently evil. Because we're not angels, we cannot give absolute power to people in government. And so they created a system of checks and balances, both within the central government and outside of the central government against the central government, to balance it in multiple ways, because the thing they were most concerned about was consolidation. Now, the tack that Dinesh D'Souza and many conservatives take, and this is what I didn't talk about in the review, is to counterbalance these founders who owned slaves at the beginning of the Republic, to try to counter them by making Abraham Lincoln into some kind of a liberating saint, to do a hagiography on him. And there was far too much naive stuff in there about Abraham Lincoln. If you want to know about Abraham Lincoln, look up The Real Abraham Lincoln by Thomas D. Lorenzo, or Lincoln the Man. There's many historical books that point out what happened during the Civil War. Lincoln destroyed due process. He gave us an income tax. He gave us a draft. We had some of the biggest riots we've ever had in this country. He was opposed by many of the abolitionists who had supported abolition. They opposed what Abraham Lincoln was doing. That does not balance or justify what happened with these slaves from the founders. We don't have to rely on having some kind of a saint replace these initial founders. We need to understand that the system itself needs to be reformed in some areas, but it's not bad based on evil men or less than perfect men. And so we don't need to create a false version of Abraham Lincoln in order to move this country forward. That was my biggest criticism of it. I was very disappointed to see just the lockstep embrace of what happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, all these continual wars that we've had after World War II, not recognizing this is being driven by the military-industrial complex. To say that we didn't make any money off of Vietnam, that we didn't make any money off of Iraq. No, there were people who made a lot of money off of those wars. They're called the military-industrial complex. We don't need to excuse it based on that. Those were inexcusable lies that were told to the American public. A lot of people who were compartmentalized went and fought in those wars for very noble reasons, but they were lied to. We just had congressmen come out and say that we need to stop talking about how mistakes were made and talk about how we were lied to. Dennis Kucinich said that. He said that in the Huffington Post, and the very next day, Harry Reid comes out and said mistakes were made on Iraq. No, we need to own up to our mistakes. We need to own up to the fact that we were lied to about Iraq. We need to own up to the fact that slavery was wrong, not make any excuses for it, and understand that even the people who gave us that system of government, the founders, were less than perfect, but that doesn't take away from the ideas of individual liberty and freedom. When I went to Bilderberg and was talking to people there in Copenhagen, we were talking about how the Constitution had essentially been just a dead letter, a piece of paper, according to George Bush, as he's reported to have said. It's just a blank piece of paper. But they said, you have something very important that we don't have in Denmark, and that is a tradition, a history of individual liberty. You have a system of government that was based on that, and that's something that's very important that we need to hang on to. So I would still recommend that you go see the film, but I would also recommend that you spend a little bit of time and learn about Abraham Lincoln and not try to justify what the wrongs that other people have done by creating a false hagiography about Abraham Lincoln. Now, there's a story that's breaking today. HHS bars a congressman in Oklahoma from seeing immigrant children. As we've talked about many times, there is an opacity about what's going on. They're trying to keep this secret. They're barring even congressmen from going in. This is Jim Bridenstine, Republican of Oklahoma. He said, what are they trying to hide? Do they not want the children to speak with members of Congress? As a Navy pilot, I've been involved in operations countering illicit human trafficking. I would like to know to whom these children are being released. That's a very good point. Are they being held and released into a human trafficking operation? Because that happens in America as well. He said the security guards would not even let him in. He says, what kind of a country do we have when even a congressman can't see what's going on? And that's what we ran into when our reporters went down to the Nancy Pelosi photo op that happened this last Saturday. Here's a clip of what happened to Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs as Michael Savage talks about it, what the real media is doing.
Son, I believe in America. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in borders. I believe in language. I believe in culture. And I am sick and tired of seeing illegitimate, illegal aliens running all over my country and running all over Congress and rioting and screaming for what they want. Why don't we riot? Why don't we go to a Durbin's office and tell him what we think of him? It would only take small groups of 50 people at any time to start screaming at any congressman or senator, wherever they may go. Groups of 50, that's all it would take. You'd get your way, I can guarantee you. I didn't say hurt anybody. That's the last thing you want to do. If they'll let illegal aliens break into Congress and start screaming and then spewing hatred, demanding amnesty for 30 million illegal aliens,